everyone. I'm Christina Criddle, and I'm really happy to have Thomas Plantenga here, who's the CEO of Vinted. Just a show of hands, who knows what Vinted is?
Oh, quite a lot.
Okay, who uses it? Okay,
there you go.
Lots of people here. So I don't think we need you to tell us what Vinted does.
Yes.
But I would love just to hear a little bit more about what drove you to want to become chief executive of Vinted, and what was the state of the company when you became CEO?
So I didn't want to become the CEO of Vinted. Let's start with that. I just sold my previous company that I incubated with Fabrice, and that was also a second-hand platform, but in the US. And I came to Lithuania to help Justus, Mantas, and Vaidas out because things were going very wrong. And I think my initial motivation was that I saw that people were really working hard to build something nice, that there was enormous pressure of shareholders, things were not going well, and I could just feel the pain because I've seen that pain and experienced that pain before in my life. So I got out of an exit myself. I wanted to relax a little bit, but then I met these people and I felt like I wanted to help them because I kind of understood where this journey was going. And then when I started building plans, they really were enthusiastic about these plans, and they thought like, okay, this is something that we might need to do. And then they really got convinced, and they said, okay, let's fully do this. And then I felt like, okay, I'm not gonna be like this douchebag consultant who shows slides and then see you later, I'm back to New York. I thought like, okay, I really care for these guys, I care for this company, let's help them out. So then after helping them out for like 3-4 months, things were going really, really well. And then I decided they asked me to stay, and initially I stayed to just support the founding team, and then they asked me to step up, which was never really the plan. But then when things went well and I really felt comfortable in leading this company, it just started to make sense. So I think those were the drivers, trying to help them. And then why I enjoyed it is because the team was just fantastic. Like, you got to imagine 2016, 17 is the hype of this kind of apps and mobile e-commerce. But then in Lithuania, you barely had anything of this. So then when this company was in trouble, anytime a company like that would be in trouble in Berlin or Amsterdam, people would just jump ship to the next cool startup to get a new package there and move on. But there, these people actually really wanted to fight for it. So it felt really cool to be part of this like little crew that wanted to fight for something. And so in the beginning, the motivation was to fight to survive, then to build a company that can sustain. And then we realized, okay, this can actually have a massive impact on society, because the amount of people using this, we can actually have an impact on how people consume. So then over the last years, it really became about, okay, how do we really change the consumption trend to really make secondhand first choice, which when I joined in 2016, making secondhand first choice sounded a bit like a delusional vision. And now we see that out of our members, practically in France, roughly half of our members, half of their items in their wardrobe are secondhand now. And they wouldn't have sold secondhand items without our app. So we see that there is actually a real chance now of, bringing more circularity at scale to the fashion industry. And I think what's important here is that last word, at scale, because there are a lot of sustainability initiatives that look nice, sound nice, but they never get like mass adoption. And I think we're very lucky that we were able to create a financial proposition that is attractive to people, that it actually becomes financially attractive to do the sustainable thing. Instead of that, you have to pay premium to buy something that is more sustainable. And I think, because if you use the forces of capitalism, you're using one of the biggest badass forces in this world. If you can get hundreds of millions behind something to build it, it's gonna go faster than people's ethical feelings about whether they want to choose the right thing. If you look at...
So you think having a financial incentive is stronger than the moral incentive?
So if you look at the people that shop at Vinted, 20% of them, they shop at Vinted because they think it's the right choice. They say like, look, it's going to be a waste to buy something new, I'm going to buy something second. 20%. 50% of the people buy at Vinted because it's financially more sustainable. It's cheaper. So that's fine. People work really hard for their money. They have to work 8 hours, 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, and they have to be careful with it. So if you can put like the biggest incentive, which is still in this world financial, in line with an environmental incentive, then you can accelerate something. So I think any development that you do on any sustainable model or product that you build, like, don't complain about capitalism, try to use it. And for Vinted, it was the same. They had a fee of 20% before I came. And to get to a fee of 5% while having a financial sustainable company, it's incredibly tough. Like, we had to fire half of the company. To give you an example how serious we are about like saving every little cent per transaction, we run our own servers. We're not plugged into AWS. We have our own Metal because that's cheaper. We have our own security software. We have our own customer support software. Like, we go to the deep, deep ends to make any cost per transaction as low as possible because we know only if we give you this service at a very low cost, people will use it.
And I think one of the interesting things is, so you turned a profit for the first time last year. A lot of these platforms have really struggled to reach profitability.
Yeah.
You mentioned you had to make difficult decisions like sacking half of the staff.
Yeah.
How have you managed to make it a business success?
So I think a hardcore focus on cost control, and at the same time, all of your other energy goes into making it as easy as possible and as cheap as possible for your consumers. So it's very simple. People will come back to Vinted if they sell their items fast, if the transaction fees are low, and if your package is on time, practically, or at least the time we promise. And if you don't get scammed. So scamming and late shipping, that's why people would leave. So we need to focus on those things, and we need to bring that value at the lowest possible cost. So it's not about being a fancy brand. It's not about being speaking to people about sustainability and making it cool and being a fashion company. No, when you look at us, we run our own servers, we run our own tech, we try to do everything as cheap as possible to be able to give this to our users at a price point that makes sense. And before, all the other models, like now everybody's switching to a 5% fee, but before, all the other models had 20% fees because that was easier. And you know, it's the hard road that leads to, in the end, the longer term, bigger output and success, I think.
I think it's really interesting what you're saying about needing to make it financially attractive for consumers. And we've seen fast fashion really take over brands like Shein. I mean, you do have a lot of those brands on your platform as well. In a way, aren't you endorsing the fast fashion industry by letting people buy and sell those items?
No, so absolutely not.
Wouldn't it be better to just ban those labels?
No.
Why not?
Every possible research that you see, that when an item is being bought, it's better if it's being reused many, many times, right? Because then the lifetime of the item gets better, and we see that by doing that, people are using that item, and it goes at a slower pace, it goes to waste or recycling. So it is better if it's reused. Then secondly, what we see is that our users are, because they know they can resell an item, they're actually allowing themselves to buy more quality items and practically go up into the chain. So practically that's what's happening. And then next to that, when they are now selecting items, because they buy secondhand, they can buy better quality items. So out of all the statistics, we don't see we fuel as fast fashion or ultra fast fashion. And I'm always surprised, like, when I get this to me, because who is fueling ultra fast fashion? Are the ultra fast fashion companies who produce these goods. And if we look at the fashion industry, let's be honest about how big this is, right? So Europe is roughly 400 billion of sales of fashion, of which a big chunk is fast fashion, right? So just do the math, 500 million revenue, so let's say we have a 10% take rate, 5 billion of GMV, 5 billion versus 400 million, right? We're a little bit more than 1%. So are we with 1% of secondhand fueling the ultra fast fashion company? I mean, if you just do the maths and you look at the statistics of our user interviews, like, we're actually enabling people to start reusing items and buying better items instead of fueling fast fashion.
I guess it would be about taking a moral stand, though, against it as an industry.
So, and then if you do that, then you hurt the environment. So, like, fantastic virtual signaling, but you create more waste, you don't let things be reused. So it sounds nice, but forget about shit that sounds nice, because it's not important. It also sounds nice to have a 20% take rate, but it works a lot better to have a 5% take rate and work on your servers. Yes, working on servers is much more nerdier than working on fantastic fashionable branding stuff. It's a lot more boring, it's a lot more unsexy, but it's what matters. So, and I think this is what is so important, and so much narrative gets lost in inspirational talk. You know what it takes to build a company like this? It takes ridiculous focus on holding your costs low and adding value to your to your users, and being maniacal about that, and not being distracted by what is the latest trend, fashionable thing to say about fast fashion. Because certain brands are actually doing this and they're hurting themselves. And I think it's, yeah, I just don't get it. I'm puzzled.
And I'm also really interested to hear, just in terms of the endless consumption that we're seeing, I'm guessing with Vinted, I might be wrong, you are hoping to change the way that people are consuming.
100%.
Do you think you can do it? Do you think you can really have an impact?
Yes, I think so. If I see now that half of the wardrobes is secondhand, and that wouldn't have happened with us, and this is in France, that's not half, it's 45 or something like that. But that we're there, and we're there in 8 years' time. If I then see that we're consistently building the financial economics of our model better and better, and that we're reinvesting into things that are actually helping. So for example, we could have just had this marketplace and keep on growing it and churn out better EBITDA margins. Instead, what we do, we're building now a shipping company, and we're not building a traditional shipping company, we're building a locker shipping company with a fully electrified infrastructure, where we from the ground up build like electrical vans, bicycles, electrical little bicycle trucky things that are there. So what we're doing is we're building an infrastructure that is, again, cheaper in the cost per delivery, but also way better in the CO2 output that's there. So we're not only aiming to practically building this marketplace that then is going to fuel to really make secondhand first choice, we're also then looking at our value chain, and wherever in our value chain we see an opportunity to take out CO2 and take out cost, we'll go and do it. And the beauty is, when you think of it, the beauty is every kilojoule costs money. So every time you're able to save energy, you're able to get a cheaper proposition. So from that angle, we try to look at every process in our value chain and try to see, okay, how can we make this better, save energy, thereby save CO2, and thereby save money, and thereby create a proposition that is better for the world and better for our company.
Is it moving fast enough?
So that's like, I think yes, but that's obviously nobody can answer, right? So nobody knows exactly. So I recently read up on all the climate change models, and I have a bit of a background in modeling because I have a deep technical background. And so we actually don't know. So we have these bandwidths on climate modeling, and everybody's kind of like, all the climate researchers are like, well, this is kind of what we expect, but it's within a bandwidth, and it's now at the top layer of the bandwidth. But anybody who knows about models is that like every predictability has a certain bandwidth of predictability, right? And thus, if we're now at the upper end of that bandwidth, and actually maybe the new bandwidth lies much higher, which has high consequences for the predictions over the next 20 years, which sounds then on one hand kind of scary, and then nothing is ever moving fast enough. Then on the other hand, you know, in these multivariate systems, it's very hard to actually predict what the actual real impacts will be. And to a certain extent, I think we have quite some time to make this transition. And I think the only way to accelerate it and to go faster if we align financial incentives with our environmental incentives. And that comes not only for companies, but also from regulations. Because we're talking a lot about how companies are bad, how companies can do better. But what we need is clear regulation. CO2 needs to be taxed in a way that it becomes more favorable to do the environmental production of new clothing, for example, or any good that you produce. And if you look at, for example, regulations that are coming live right now, we need to really critically look that we don't hurt the models that are actually working right now. For example, reporting things like DAX 7. A lot of our users are worrying now that they have to pay tax over the second-hand items they sell. They don't obviously have to pay tax because they're selling second-hand items at a lower price, so you don't have any profits, you don't have tax. Yet the European government implemented this reporting of DAX 7, and now everybody is worried about that, and we have to explain that. So I think regulators need to be incredibly careful in not hurting businesses that are on the right track. We need to make sure that we start taxing CO2 and pollution in a way that it's fair. And then thirdly, as Europe, we need cash, right? We don't have any. In the last 30 years, we didn't build any company that is worth more than 100 billion. Not one. We did not start one. There are companies who are worth more than 100 billion, but they're not started in the last 30 years. Guess what they did in the US? They started 7 of them who are worth $1 trillion. So what do you do with companies? You tax them, you get tax revenues, and you can use that to do all the good stuff that we like. Hospitals, institutes that teach us, all the good stuff that we need. Law and order, judges. We need it in our society. So we're kind of like on a trajectory with Europe that we're failing to produce these companies that create capital value and equity value and tax value for our society, and at the same hand innovate to avoid an environmental catastrophe. So yes, we need to push our regulators to make the right regulating rules, and we should not be ashamed of companies that are growing to high heights to do something, because if we have the regulation right, we don't have to worry about these things. So we need to get rid of a tax loophole that makes it possible to ship practically cheaper from China to Belgium than from Germany to Belgium, because that's why China is growing fast, right? It's not because they're magically smart in designing beautiful clothing in China. No, they have a tax loophole. So thank you very much, Europe. Here you got all this cheap clothing. Good luck with that. Like, yeah.
Whilst we're on the topic of Europe, I mean, you've mentioned before that you're IPO ready.
Technically.
Have you thought about where you would list? Would it be in Europe? Would it be in London?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a presence in the US, so if we list, it's probably Europe. But to be very specific, I said in that interview, and that interview has been copied and miscopied many times, I said, technically, we have the abilities to go IPO. We're not planning to go IPO at this point in time.
Why not?
Because it's very, very nice to be a private company and take a lot of risks and innovations in the private market and not having to tell to everybody exactly how things are going. And we're growing incredibly fast, we're profitable, we don't need money, I don't need anybody, I just need to focus and build. And therefore I don't need the public markets at this point in time. At a later point in time will definitely be favorable for us because then our shares are easy tradable, I can use them for bigger acquisitions and I can get liquidity easier. So definitely there's going to be a point that we're going to do this. But at this point in time, I'm rolling out a shipping company, I'm building a payment company, I'm expanding to 3 markets every year, I'm expanding into electronics, into luxury. I got enough on my plate instead of talking every quarter to public investors.
It sounds like you did.
Thanks.
I just have a final question for you as well. Obviously, you're very passionate about this, and you truly believe that you can affect change. How do you remain so optimistic?
Look, I think, so I have this since I'm like 5 years old, and my whole youth I've been bullied about it, that I'm naive and optimistic. So yes, for some kind of reason, my hormones...
I didn't say naive.
No, so now that you're successful, nobody thinks you're naive anymore. It's very lovely, but like if I was not Thomas of Vinted CEO, you would say, oh, that naive blonde guy with long hair who likes to surf, he doesn't know shit. So, and that's totally fine. It's very understandable. So I'm a bit optimistic by hand, but let's think about the following fundamental principles in our media. As humans, we click on stuff that looks scary and like shocks you. So therefore, certain news that's kind of shocking, that gets more sales, gets more clicks. So newspapers obviously feed us this news, and that the climate models might not be right. It's shocking and it's scary. But then on the other hand, that we are improving efficiencies across the board with 2% for the last 20 years, which is amazing. Doesn't get news because like these small improvements that are critical, they don't get news. So if you sum up like the progress we've made over the last, let's say, 100 years in terms of how people get out of poverty, how much we're changing now our energy, resources and making a transition, how much less crime there is in the Western world, how much, like there's so many things going so well for us. So when you zoom out and you actually see what we're achieving as human beings, then that's actually incredibly inspiring. And when you're on your day-to-day news cycle, you get scared. I get scared as well. But I think if you see what's possible over a longer period of time and how fast innovation is going right now, then we should be absolutely excited about what's possible with all the new technologies coming. For example, I just invested into a company that uses artificial models to more quicker get to material science solutions, better magnets, better metals, everything like that. So we're going to use all kinds of artificial intelligence to find solutions to build better materials, build better processes, build better energy-generating processes. If we think about better energy-generating processes, the cost of energy will continue to go down. And when we do that, a lot of new things will become available that we can produce things in a way more environmental friendly way. And that way we get an energy abundance for many, many people, and we can build and have a society that doesn't cost the environment to die around us, while we have an enormous amount of quality of life improvements over the next couple of decades. So I'm absolutely optimistic because I believe in science, and I see in the field of science enormous contributions, which makes me very hopeful. And I just wish more people would study physics and mathematics and build and innovate, and instead of reposting posts about sustainability on Instagram, because like we as humans, we have such amazing capabilities to innovate. It's incredible. Look at what we got in the last 100 years. Like, yes, we don't got flying cars, but for the rest, it's pretty cool what we got compared to 100 years ago. And we did that ourselves. And those people who did that are not brilliant. I'm not brilliant. They're all kind of average people like we all are. We just put a lot of work in it, and we got lucky and found a solution. I mean, and that works very well when you have like billions and billions of people giving it a try. Because statistics will show us we'll find solutions if billions and billions of people give it a try. So I think we should be optimistic because we're amazing creatures. We find solutions, and we're a lot of them. And yeah, so I think it's going to be fine. I think it's going to be actually very cool.
Thomas, thank you so much.
Thank you.